let's talk about the post-war P.38. So recently, quite a few of these have been imported into the United States, and many of the big name surplus carriers have had them in stock and currently do at the time of this video. So with a lot of these imports coming in, and most of the major retailers selling them for about $5.50 these days, a lot of people are picking up some of these, including myself. And I just thought we'd take a moment to talk a little bit more about their history and what their role is in contemporary collecting. Now, I won't do a complete teardown in this video. In a previous video when I unboxed, I did a thorough cleaning. You can go back and look at that if you're interested. But essentially, for the field strip, drop the hammer, and then it comes off like so. We have this very discreet import mark here, which all of us are a big fan of, and then boom, we're right in here looking at the internals. You have that double recoil spring, which looks pretty cool, and of course the frame weighs nothing, being aluminum. A lot of people were concerned about cracking, and a lot of departments were concerned about the cracking as well, which is why they later added a couple of features to prevent such things from happening. Of course, reassemble is just in reverse. All set. Now, first up, let's do a little bit of comparison. The first pistol that I ordered was directly from Century Arms. This one was listed in very good condition. This was an additional $10, and I thought, why not try getting something directly from the source and seeing if they're any different than the others. Now, this is in really great shape. Don't see too much wrong with this at all. This is one of the best looking ones that I've seen. This is also the E serial number, and there is no date on the slide. Now, for comparison, we have an order from Centerfire Systems, and this was listed as just good condition. This was not a very good, and I think this was a little bit cheaper than even the standard models. So this one has quite a bit more wear from holsters, some scratches, and a little bit of muzzle wear, and a couple of good nicks, some chunks out of the trigger guard there. But everything functions just fine, as it should, including the decocker, which tends to break some of those springs, and this one is also dated 460 on the slide, unlike the other. Unfortunately, the spare magazines are pretty pricey for these right now. We're looking at between $40 and $50 a piece, which is a little difficult to swallow. I was able to pick up this German Army holster, which appears to be period correct for these post-wars, and it's in a condition that pretty much matches this one here. So that's the one that I keep with this holster, and have an extra mag in there as well. So this all fits in here pretty nicely and is a nice little package. So I always like to show some reference materials when I have the chance. I happen to have a couple in my collection here, and the first one I'll go over is Know Your Walther P.38 Pistols. This is a very short and sweet little book. This is long out of print, I believe, but it does take you through a few of the various model types. Of course, mostly focusing on the wartime 38s. However, there is a nice section in here about the two-line slide markings from Walther, which is great because that's what I have, as well as a couple other interesting variations. All right, and of course, the gold standard is going to be the P.38 pistol, Germany's famous service pistol in detail by Alexander Khrushchev. And in detail it is. All kinds of fantastic reference information about proof marks, grips, accessories, different production types, different production numbers, time frames, etc., etc. It's a fantastic resource if you can afford it. I believe this started out at $100. And I'm not sure if they're out of print now, but if they are, you can pretty much guarantee that that price will... So, this is going to be another one from Brad Simpson Publishing and the good folks over at Simpsons Limited. But this is a fantastic resource if you can find one, and if you have enough interest in the wartime models to make it worth your while. But it's great to have in anyone's collection. So for the first time after the war, the Walther plant had moved and gotten back into production. So around 1954, they began production on about 100,000 of these P.38s with the aluminum frame. This came in about 6 ounces lighter than the original all-steel P.38, so you can see the appeal right away. Now, of course, into the late 1950s, there were some small incremental changes made in the production of the parts, how they were produced, made it simplified and that sort of thing. But it wasn't until 1967 when some of the first major changes were made to the P.38 or the P.1. Most notably, the slide serrations were increased so that you could grip and cycle with a gloved hand, as well as the thickness of the slide was also increased to provide further rigidity, often referred to as the fat slide. And you can tell those apart by the serrations will extend beyond the safety. So it's a quick way to tell which version it is. So in addition to thickening the slide, there was a reinforcement rib that was added between the bridge and the breech block. After that, of course, they went to the reinforcing hex pin in the frame, and they made those modifications for a reason. So again, if you pick one of these up and plan on using it as a shooter, be cautious. Now, both of these examples, like a majority of the ones that are coming in, are what's considered the thinner slide. And so from that point on, from about 1954 up until the early 90s, middle 90s, this was the main sidearm of the Bundeswehr. So if you're wondering if there's still some military or service history for these P.38s, there absolutely is. In about 1971, I believe these were made available to the commercial market, and these kept in service until the 90s. So that's a pretty long time period for this type of design, which has proved itself pretty well. So just to recap, there is some pretty good history still associated with the post-World War II P.38s with the aluminum frame. One being that I consider this to be a version 1 of what would turn into be the P.1. Also, these remained in service until the 90s, so most of them were used quite a bit and are still great little pistols. As with most surplus items, there's a variety of different conditions. If you're looking for a shooter grade or if you're looking for more collector grade, the options are out there for you. So if you haven't picked one up and you're considering it, I hope that you go ahead and pull that trigger on one of these before it's too late. So when it comes to shootability And is this suitable as a range plinker? I would say not necessarily. Of course, this is an aluminum frame pistol that's not reinforced and is known to have issues with cracking in the frame. I would consider this more of a collectible. Now, that being said, I have shot these and they're fine, but I would stay away from 9mm NATO ammo, as well as heavier grains, the 147s, and that sort of thing, just to be on the safe side. So the other day someone asked me if I think it's worth picking one up at that price, and to them I would say absolutely. In fact, if you have the means, I would pick up an additional one, because you can always keep the best condition one for yourself, and trade one off in the future, depending on where the market goes on these. So that's going to do it for me on the Walther P.38s, post-war aluminum frames that are currently available on the surplus market. If you're considering getting one, I would pick one up before they're gone for good. As history has taught us, what's available now will soon dry up and be more desirable in the future. So as always, I appreciate you watching. Until next time, keep your fingers off the trigger, and we'll see you later.